Hello friends, and welcome to a special State of the Dungeon address. Not really a State of the Dungeon address. This is more of an after-action report for a very special game that took place February 13th, 2021. The occasion? My wife's birthday. Now, we've had a lot of great memories over the years. We've been married now for getting close to 20 years. Big milestones. And this was a big round number, which is always important to keep track of. So to make it a little special, one of the memories that we built over the years together, she treasures the most, was being able to play role-playing games with her friends. Now, basically how that group got together was a group of the girlfriends and wives of my friends that I formed through college. All got together, got along pretty well, and because us guys spent a lot of time role-playing, and some of them enjoyed role-playing a bit too, sometimes getting in on our games, sometimes doing other things, they all got together and asked me if I would run a game for them. Well, one thing turned into another, and we ended up playing several games, having several decent campaigns. A couple of them went pretty long. That group got together regularly for, several years. And it was always a different experience than playing with all of my guy friends. The girls just have a different sense of humor that it feeds a different kind of need, I think, that they all really, really enjoyed and prioritized being able to make it. Some people came and some people went. Some people were a little bit of an irritant to others, but they kind of dealt with it just to keep the group together. But eventually, the children started coming, and it really became hard to dedicate that game. And despite the fact that I had a personal game that was running with my other group for quite a while, my wife actually said, if you have to sacrifice something, then the girls' group can be it. And it all kind of broke apart. Somewhat organically. I had a bad campaign. It happens. The last one I'm not all that proud of. We also played a 4th edition game. The one game of 4th edition that I ran a campaign, the girls didn't like it. It didn't. The rules didn't catch with them. They didn't really appreciate the game as a whole. And now that I'm more experienced, I think I could have maybe done a little bit better with it by brutally getting rid of most of what the experience of 4th edition is by the book supposed to be like. Could have done a lot better with that. But all things being equal, it was something that came and had its time and it went. And she really loved that group. She really loved hanging out with her friends. She doesn't have a great number of friends outside of that, so she really liked it. She really wanted to do it again sometime. So what I did was I surreptitiously got behind her back, sent out messages to a number of her friends and people that we've played with and people whose company we enjoy. And I invited 3 of those friends to come over and on her birthday night and play a game. Now, unfortunately, one of them had long-standing plans and wasn't able to break them. And another one had some personal tragedies in her life she wasn't able to make it. So only one friend showed up. But it was still a complete surprise, which I take credit for. It's my first and only surprise party, so that probably helped the surprise out a bit. But I arranged for the entire game beforehand. I made plans. I went out and got the food she wanted, plus food for the friend that showed up. It was a great setup. Unfortunately, the results weren't everything I had hoped for. Not the game itself, but I wish the others could have shown up too. Just wasn't able to happen. But who knows? Maybe in the future they all realize that this kind of thing can happen and they'll want to do it again. Because I think, as I said, we've gotten older, the children are grown up more and can take care of themselves, or finding care for them isn't as hard. So I think we're all in a better place now if we ever wanted to pursue that again. But I digress. Her first indication this was going to happen was when I came back with the food for the night that she had requested. She wanted us to go to this particular restaurant for food. instead of asking me to cook, which I like cooking her special foods, but went out, got it, bumped into her on the way into the house, and oh, look who came along. It was nice. They had some nice time chatting, and then I'm like, but you know what? I have a game down ready for us, so when you're ready, let's go. And she was pretty delighted. So, how did I run this game? First of all, I knew that it was going to be a one-shot. So, to handle that, I made pre-generated characters. And this is how I did it. It's a bit different from how I usually would do a pre-generated character. I basically made blank character sheets and made classes. I made a total of... I didn't make a class for everything. There were some I wasn't interested in, and I didn't think that would really help them at all. I made a fighter, I made a rogue, I made a bard, I made a cleric, and I made a paladin. Figuring that if they were interested in any of those, that would be cool. They could all work together. Didn't have to worry about the esoteric nature of the monks or arcane spell casting or anything like that. Just keep it very simple. My decision was partially made by the fact I knew this was going to be a two-person game. So having a wizard or sorcerer might have been a little bit much of a luxury. It would have worked. I wasn't opposed to the idea all in all, but I kind of choked it back because I didn't think it was necessary, quite honestly, for what I had in mind. If they really wanted a healer, one of them could play a healer, but the fighter, the rogue, certainly were options that they could take that wouldn't involve spell casting at all. And as it turned out, that's what they chose. My wife chose the rogue, her friend chose the fighter, and after that what I did, and this actually worked out really well too, was I took a sampling of different races, condensed them down to a single line of text, and just let them choose from them, like drawing straws, really. My wife had said that she'd wanted to play a tabaxi for a while. I had no problem with this, so one of the options was a tabaxi. And her friend chose a half-elf. But basically what I did was, instead of offering every single option, I realized that I have a very limited set that I need to work with. So I only took the kind of races that would commonly be found in this kingdom. So, for instance, there's a hill dwarf here. No mountain dwarves. There are mountain dwarves in that particular area. By fiat, by me choosing the world and where I wanted them to be. The tabaxi, and let's see, there's a Lightfoot halfling here, and high elf, and human. Those all went unchosen. So by having just this brief description, doesn't need a lot of detail. I didn't need full printouts of all the different abilities, and also many of the abilities didn't matter in my game, and I didn't want them to. This is something that a lot of people who think D&D is too crunchy, some people do, you gotta realize, you pick what is important to your game, and you can cut out anything that's not. Languages, didn't care. Everybody was going to be able to understand each other. There was nothing that was going to go on with different languages. Move speed. All the encounters were going to take place in single rooms where they can probably get to just about anywhere. Didn't need to worry about move speeds or anything like that. Most things like dwarven stone cunning. Wasn't going to have a situation where that was going to matter at all, and I wasn't going to put in any kind of traps. So all of these things were just stuff I stripped out. The races were down to the bare minimum for them to make a decision on what they wanted to play. Then, backgrounds. This is what I did instead. Instead of giving them the list of the backgrounds from, say, the D&D book or some alternate source, I made my own. Why? Number one, I wanted to make it special. Number two, this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit in terms of what a resource backgrounds are. Because outside of your session zero, backgrounds can really be used to frame the direction that a campaign is going to go in. And in this case, this worked pretty well. Now, this was my wife's special day, so I gave her a special background. Her background, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And I would also recommend, too, if any of you are playing with, say, younger folk, or you want to make somebody feel special, give them a character that has something like this. Princess of the Realm. Yes, she got to play a Tabaxi rogue princess. You're a beloved princess. People are generally pretty nice to you, and you live in your family castle with the best of food and servants. Still, trouble seems to find you. From princess eating dragons, court intrigue, kidnapping plots, and more, your life is not boring. Got to set things in motion so that there's a reason for a character to be an adventurer. Skill proficiencies: persuasion and intimidation. For a princess, that's perfect. Tool proficiencies: scribes' tools and weaver's tools. You know, things that are appropriate for courtly, you know, just to give her that. Equipment: your starting arms and armor are +1 magical weapons and armor. It's good to be the princess. It gives her a leg up, and again, not overly powerful, but let her know that this character is special and has cool stuff. And that, I think, is important for a one-shot. It's not going to hurt anything letting her start off with magical stuff. Also, you have access to 10 gems worth 10 gold each, so 100 gold to start with is a substantial amount. Each that no one will miss. It's her expendable cash. You throw that out however she likes. Royal jewelry, a personal grooming kit, riding leathers, and a mirror. So she is all set with whatever she needs. Plus, she's a princess. She could probably ask for and get almost anything she wanted, too. Features. Yes, Your Highness. Subjects of the realm are used to not questioning their betters. Anyone under the influence of the court has disadvantage against contested social tests with you. So persuasion, intimidation, deception, anything she wants to do on somebody, that other person has disadvantage or a -5 penalty to to her difficulty numbers to do. It's good to be the princess. The other ones that were available were like Defender of the Realm or Defender of the Throne, which basically made that character her bodyguard. I had a spy master background too, somebody who was good at getting all the information and secrets. Somebody choosing that might have given them a leg up in their actual mission. Now, the mission actually that I chose, the adventure, was kind of a fun one, playing on the year of Princess, and that's what the actual title of the adventure is, of Princesses and Dragons. And this time, I have them set in a campaign I'm calling the Sunshine Realms, which is kind of a reaction to most D&D adventures. Even though the D&D setting is not particularly grimdark, the idea that the civilized world is just a flickering of candles amidst all this overwhelming darkness. Campaigns like Storm King's Fury or Beyond the Into the Abyss, or, you know, all of these are horrible things that could, you know, destroy the world, and these menaces are just hanging around in your average D&D universe. I wanted a world that wasn't like that. Maybe something a little more lighthearted, something that, you know, younger folks could enjoy, but also people who just want to step away from, well, it's a good thing there's this cranky old archmage here we have to go to because we need help to save the world again. The Sunshine Realms aren't like that. They're dappled with all of these small kingdoms, and people are generally happy. There's a Dragon King overlord, a gold dragon, who is an emperor, and he basically makes sure that people get taken care of pretty well. So the standard of living is nice. People are tended to, cared for, work hard, but they're rewarded for their work, and generally people get along pretty well. And instead of this being this great dark tableau with points of light and the heroes trying to save those points of light, instead it's a beautiful image with occasional splashes of darkness the heroes can go out and confront. If any of you think this isn't exciting, maybe it's just not for you, and that's fine. But, so anyhow, as a princess, her father is a king, and as a Tabaxi king, he has a kingdom, and to set and play the motion, the Dragon Emperor he has children, quite a few children, as a matter of fact. And so what he does is his most trusted kingdoms, he will send his children out to become kind of a ward of the court. The safety of his children are tasked to the Empire, and goodness help the place that the child gets hurt. And they learn about the different cultures that are within the Great Empire. So they learn what makes the Tabaxi special. They learn what makes the elves special. And everything generally works out pretty well because the Dragon Overlord is very, very intelligent and very, very concerned with the welfare of his children and his people. And there's precious few things that really would want to make an ancient gold dragon upset, quite simply. And it's the nightmare scenario of any of these kings, so there's a lot of work put into keeping them safe and also doing what, you know, their purpose for the court is. And in the case of the young dragon, Rennie, who has a long dragon name that wasn't important for this, Rennie is studying to become an apprentice mage with a once great wizard at the court that Rennie is learning from. And since he's a hatchling, he's very young, he's only 20, 25, he has been growing up with the princess and friends. So he's a family friend as much as he is the child of the emperor and a gold dragon. He usually appears as a half-elf, and he's just as interested in having fun with his friends as he is about his responsibilities and duties, which he takes very seriously. He's a nice guy. Well, he goes missing. Nightmare scenario. The prince is gone. Oh no. So the princess and her retainer find out about this through word of mouth, that Rennie hasn't been seen in a while. He's not done his duties, which is unheard of. He is a very big stickler about doing everything he's asked to do by his master and fulfilling his responsibilities. So when he goes missing, it's a big deal. And so they go and they talk to the court wizard. Now, I took some inspiration from social media for names and things like that. I decided that his name would be Mediocritus, because there was a quote about something in one of the groups that I had where it had a bust of a Roman philosopher, and it's like, meh, I'm sure it'll be okay, from Mediocritus. Mediocrity. Well, this is Mediocritus, as in meteor, as in having direction, and he was an evoker. I took inspiration, but I don't think they caught the meteor part. Oh well. They had fun with it. And I had him as this befuddled old wizard who was once great, but is now... he's twilighting pretty badly. But it seems like Rennie can always get the best out of him, so it works out okay, but he's this ancient wizard that problems happen with. So they go to him to try to find out about what might have happened to Rennie. And I decided we only had 2 players, so what I was going to do is I was going to lean into the role-playing of it all. I was going to role-play the characters to the hilt, cut down on combat and confrontations, and let the players pick and choose what fights they actually wanted. So as a result, most of the combat in the actual dungeon got pushed all the way back to the end of the night. Well, with Mediocritus, he was interested in helping, he was enthusiastic, but they were all just a little worried about how much he wanted to help them, because his powers are not quite as reliable as they used to be. They met his butler, Mr. Tak, who is a huge construct. He's 8 feet tall and doesn't fit out the door of the chamber anymore, but he's a polite butler construct. And they talked to him. The old wizard got his crystal ball. Didn't have a stand, so he had Mr. Tak hold it. And the crystal ball exploded in front of the wizard. He was hurt badly from this. The group was fine. They made their saving throws. And the wizard had a moment of clarity where he realized that the divination he was trying to do was blocked by powerful evil magic. Magic from the darkness. Now, because this is a Sunshine Realm, I'm not going to have gods and goddesses. This is, again, kind of going away from the classic D&D thing to be a little bit more system neutral and friendly to anybody who... not everybody is comfortable with the idea of gods and goddesses and things like that, be it from latent, religious upbringings, or maybe just they don't want that extra complication. So it's quite simple. I just use the generic fantasy, the light and the darkness. The light is what powers the abilities of all of the good aligned divine casters, and the darkness is something to be feared and shunned. And fought against if found. So he warned them that there was a powerful ward on Rennie's location, and therefore his power was blocked. They went to get a cleric for Mediocritus, who, after He was like, oh, did he fireball himself again? His eyebrows just grew back. They brought him to the tower, and he comes out going, oh, he's amazingly lucid, and from what I saw, I can only confirm that it seems like somebody has used the powers of darkness to block the location to wherever Rennie is. So you should be very careful. He gave them a warning and then went off to go and talk to the king. So they then decided they were going to go to explore the summoning chamber where Rennie was supposed to clean. They found out that it was very clean, but didn't really find any other details about it. I just used a lot of nice description and everything, and to put them into place and let them go around, and they missed the clue, which not a big deal. Then they decided they were going to go and check out his room. Well, his room is locked, of course, but hey, the princess is a rogue. So she makes a first try to pick the lock, and it doesn't work. Those locks are quite good in the palace. You would hope they would be. And as the kind of potential bad thing, they got located because the spy master of the king, Artrius, was going to do exactly the same thing, and he came upon them. Now, I had Artrius as a super smooth, handsome guy who's like, well, I take care of everything and you don't need to know the cost. And he's very civil. He actually didn't even see the princess because she made a great stealth check. Amazing. But he couldn't help but see the bodyguard that's standing in front of the door, just kind of like a sore thumb that sticks out. So he came over and he talked to her, and when the Princess Tally. It was Princess Tally and Mia was the bodyguard. Princess Tally popped out from behind her friend. He's like, your stealth skills are improving. Very good. He approves. So that made her feel good. And he basically told them that Rennie is no longer in the palace anywhere. And none of his men have been able to track any kind of trace or anything. However, since he's got his agents in most places of the kingdom, the only place that he hasn't really ruled out as being likely is Fenneman's Forest, which is a forest in the northeastern section of the kingdom. Because of an ancient calamity, the forest has basically had any kind of magical sensors that try to operate in it don't work. It can't be divined into, for instance. So, as a result, a lot of the ne'er-do-wells, criminals, brigands, and the like have retreated to the forest where they can't have their locations plucked out of the ether by the powerful wizard Mediocritus. That's one of the only places that they're really safe from the crown until they decide to pop out and raid. So, as a result, it's got a shady reputation, very shady. The Spy Master has some people that are inside, but he hasn't been able to find out anything about Rennie. The only thing he was able to find out was that there's a place that he was beginning to suspect was possessed of the darkness, because his agents that went to investigate it either didn't come back or they came back frightened of monsters that appeared, which were unheard of in that part of the wood. So, as a result, that was his suspicion. And the girls latched on to that right away. Just like, we need to check this out. And he's like, well, I have my most experienced men in there. I don't recommend you go. With kind of a wink and a nod, knowing they were probably going to go. Because he's not stupid. And he left them. So the princess turned and picked the lock very smoothly, and they went in. They found his quarters undisturbed. He has a small suite of rooms. His bedchamber has the chest that he has his treasure in. As a dragon, he likes to go to sleep and be able to open up his chest and keep an eye on his treasure as the last thing that he sees, and the first thing he sees when he wakes up. So they investigated and found no sign of foul play. As a matter of fact, everything was neat and tidy. So they went to go check out his chest. And, of course, it's locked. Of course, well, you knew that she was gonna open it. And she rolled really well, and she popped the lock. Inside they found his treasure, which was a pile of coins. They found a few odds and ends, like potion bottles. They found his backup spell book. And they found a black bag. They're like, well, okay, we should do something with the bag. They open the bag up, and all of a sudden, this white furry rabbit with wings comes jumping out. His familiar, Mr. Fluffkins. Now, I know that the girls are moms and they've through a lot, but you know what? There's something that tugs at the heartstrings of most female players I've ever had, like cute, fluffy animals. And I got the idea. Originally, it was going to be a creature that I've seen in portraits in Gooey Cube, one of the native creatures of Xyanthe. But then my wife and I were playing a game, and inside of a chest was this adorable white fluffy rabbit with beautiful soulful eyes and little stars in the inside of its ears, and with wings. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to use right there. It's fresh in her memory, which is good, and I just made it into more of an Angora rabbit, so long, fine fur. So for the most part, that went pretty well. Mr. Fluffkins leaped out of the bag and tried mule kicking the two of them. He has an ability to knock people off balance because he's often underestimated, and he's really good at that. Otherwise, he has no real offensive abilities. He just knocks people prone for minimal damage. So he bounces off of Tally and goes flying off. Eventually, after repeated attempts of negotiating with the rabbit, who can't talk, he's very intelligent, but he can't really talk, and he is freaking out because he can't sense Rennie anywhere. Eventually, Mia eventually does connect. She holds a good handle animal, and they get the point across that they're trying to find him too. So they want his help, and he agrees to help them in his own way by basically just flying around and urging them to go out the door. So they follow. First, they're going to go looting the place, and Mr. Fluffkins warns them against it. But this could help us find him. No, Mr. Fluffkins knew that his master would not appreciate them taking his things. So they didn't. They went, locked everything back up, and left. They went out to the front door where the rabbit led them, and once they got there, he went, looked around, turned back, looked at them. I don't know where he is. I'll go with you, though. So, as they were discussing where to go, Mia suggested going to the library to go look for information if they could, and another NPC walked up. Angus McThunderkraken, the great red-haired captain of the King's Guard. Angus McThunderkraken, of course, was a player character that I played for just 2 sessions. He was a half-orc barbarian at the time. I love the name. It amuses me. And I gave him the most ridiculous, over-the-top Scottish, "Hey, what's you doing?" And when she said library, and I knew she was a guard, he went up, "Oh, you're thinking about going to the library? Oh, you gotta be sipping tea, you great nerd!" I had fun with it. But they blew him off pretty quickly. I opened these things up as just kind of leaving a role-playing encounter out, the possibility of them gaining information or something if they wanted to play along. If not, no big deal. Let them play at their own pace. I think that's important in these kind of scenarios. If they wanted to spend the entire thing just role-playing, they could have. But they moved on. Eventually, they went not to the library, but to the king's wardroom. That's where the maps would be. And when they went in there, they found one of the king's generals. Now, the realm has been at peace for about 250 years, so the army is titular at best. They're still well-trained. The generals make sure that they don't slack off too much. It is a paid job, after all. But at the same time, the general's proud they've never lost a battle while he's been their general, but they've never been in a big battle either, except for chasing away brigands and the like. Doombridge, however, was taken directly from the movie Excalibur from the night Henry V. Henry V, excellent movie. Exeter, one of the commanders of Henry's army, we all fell in love with him when my friends and I saw him in college. He's this big barrel-chested man with a huge black beard and bald, and it's just like, oh, you are so great. So I have channeled this guy numerous times. Also, Fulton from not Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, the Birdman, channels him really well too. So if I want to get him a little more aggressive, he goes more Fulton. But anyhow, he's like, "What are you doing here?" And they work together, which was good to see. Mia distracted Fulton while Tali went over and looted through the maps and got one for Finneman's Forest, which they were not supposed to go to. All right, everything's great. So then they decide, okay, where we need to go. They stop through the kitchens, and I got to break out my my nod to the pepper pots of Monty Python. I love breaking out the over-the-top, "Oh, my poor little darlings, you're going out for a picnic, are you? Well, you're going to need some of this, and oh, you're getting so thin, aren't you? You need to eat more. Here, have a turkey and some more loaves of bread, and we really just need vegetables for the rabbit. Oh, sure, here's an armful of them. Don't want the little buddy getting all woozy from being fatigued and hungry." And I just had fun, because that's what I do. So they took this massive basket of food with them and decided they were going to go to the stables to go get a couple of riding unicorns. What? Riding unicorns? Yeah, in my fantasy world, dang it. Riding unicorns aren't all these intelligent, noble creatures of the forest. In this world, they are also steeds for the nobility. But the common riding unicorn is not a super intelligent creature. It's a little bit more intelligent than a horse, but not so intelligent that people need to feel bad about using them to ride around on. And there are war unicorns as well. Well, neither of the girls were using a war unicorn, and these riding unicorns are in the stables, and they were able to go to get a few. But who should they run into but the king himself? And all of a sudden, Tally's tricks don't work on Daddy because he's not under her authority. So she tries to bluff that they're just going out for a picnic. And this was a roll that did not go well. My wife's luck was all over the map. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes kind of like her luck in the Mighty Protectors game, quite honestly. She was not able to successfully bluff her father, so he's like, "You are not to leave the castle." Now her father, of course, is this giant black tabaxi, former warrior, still, pretty imposing when he wants to be. And his yellow eyes were looking right through her. He was like, "You are not to leave." I was channeling a little bit of Mufasa, I admit it. "You are not to leave the palace." And he started sending his men out to go and tell the guards to not allow them through. So they're like, "Okay, Daddy, we're just going to go for a ride." And they immediately bolted for the south gate, which the messenger hadn't gotten to yet, and slipped out. They actually managed to make a sneaky roll to get away from direct observation to get away. So they did. However, the messenger saw them leave, so they started to get chased. They ran down to the village outside, and they gave away the food that they had taken. Because they didn't need that much food. They all had, trial rations or whatever in their personal gear, so it was just overkill. And, of course, the princess rolled very well to distribute the food, and the people loved her for giving them this great castle food, which was nice touch. And they immediately went off to the picnicking woods that are alongside of the castle, called Butterfield Woods. Butterfields are a curated forest. Some of the great old trees were marked and selected by the king's rangers that they are the elders of the forest and not to be cut. So there's still some very delightful open clearings and things that people like to go and picnic through, but there's no monsters. It's safe. It's patrolled. And the areas that are that have any kind of growth to them have clearly marked trails. If you think about your average, park, it's like that. So it's a wildlife preserve as much as anything. So this clearly wasn't the site for their adventure, so they used the unicorns and moved on. They outdistanced the cavalry that was being sent to round them up, trotting off. However, they did not roll well for their riding ability. So they were sore, not used to riding unicorns at speed for great lengths of time. The unicorns can take it. Their butts couldn't. And it was quite clear from the pain that they were feeling in their thighs and their backs. Every time the unicorn would rise and fall, it felt like they were sitting on a searing hot iron pan. They needed to stop. So they stopped in a local village, about 15 miles away from the forest itself. And there in the inn, they tried to blend. It didn't work. Their disguises just gave up on them, and Mia's chances weren't all that good. The princess should have had at least a decent chance, but again, another 1 or a 2. And as she was trying to sneak through, her hood got caught on a low-hanging beam, and everyone saw her. But she is the beloved princess, after all. So everybody was like, oh, wanted to, if she wanted anything to drink, they got out of their seats, and she looked like she wanted to sit there. The serving lads offered to beat anybody who was in a seat that she wanted. It was just over the top, and they were kind of almost embarrassed for all the treatment. And again, even the peasants stopped cursing while she was there. Eventually, they're like, okay, we don't have any place for you to stay. There's no inn here. We just have this tavern and the people's houses. We could put you up in the back in the sheltered area. We could throw down some straw sacking. We're sorry, it's the best we can do. And they accepted. They went back to the back room where the premises were being prepared, and they found this one young boy fighting off a large spider. Not large in the total scale. The thing was about the size of a bulldog, though. It had bitten him twice already. These kind of spiders are not man-eaters, and they're not instantly deadly. They mostly live off of pets. But he'd been stung a few times, and the girls whipped out weapons to put an end to the creature, and did so with swift efficiency. The spider barely had a chance to do more than slobber on Mia's armored leg before they finished it off in very satisfactory effort. So, moving the corpse out of the way and having a clean space, they slept. Slept well, rolled well, everything back to normal when they woke up. There was a storm the night before. The unicorns were upset because they weren't in a stable and they got wet. They didn't like it, but they gave them an apple for a peace offering, and everything went okay. They went off to the forest. They found a trail leading into the forest that was on their map. It was an older trail, which would have led to a logging camp. They followed the trail and quickly got set upon by bandits. The bandit recognized the princess because she's a beloved princess. She's a public figure. And so they were held up. The thief, who came out, Bardolph, came out with a stick painted bright red, and he's like, look, just give us half of your gold, you can walk through, no problem. And Mia's like, looked around, yeah, there are people in the forest with bows that could probably shoot at you. Okay, take all my money, there you go. That's for both of us, it's all of my money, go ahead and take it. And he's like, well, she's a princess, though. So I'll take one piece of her jewelry, too. And she's like, okay, well, I don't have anything. I'm going for an adventure. I didn't bring all of my stuff. And they were joking that she might have had piercings, non-public piercings. And so she retrieved one of those. Apparently she thinks she has a bodice of infinite piercing attire. But so she offered it up, and he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely, I'll take that. And they were allowed to go free. They negotiated their way through it without a fight, as they wanted, and that was fine. They went to the logging camp, which is actually now infested with bandits. There were children there, the families of the bandits and various criminals and the like, who eke out a tough living, but not a terrible one. And the kids were shocked to see the war unicorns and the riders, and they all ran away going, the law, the law! But they didn't really want to have any fights or have any encounters there, so they continued to press on. At this point, Mia made an excellent survival roll, and she recognized that there were Rangercraft sigils carved into some of the trees. She found one that said, "Clear path, no monsters," and they took that one. Eventually, they found a dry riverbed, and they followed along through the river until they found this huge stick dam, similar to what beavers or somebody might have used. And there was this 4-foot-tall otter perched up on top of the out-jutting log about halfway up the dam, and they talked to him. I used my rural older folk voice to talk to them, and they got along with Mr. Otterton very well. I always liked otters, and fondness a friend of mine, Chet Mitten, who also loves otters and keeps them fresh in my memory. So I thought, yeah, a were-otter needs to happen here. And basically this place, they were warned that there are werewolves in the place, and what it turns out is that there's a community of different changing breeds that all work together. But in this world, not all of the lycanthropes are evil. There's a large number of decent ones, and were-otters are a thing, and were-badgers, and were-beavers, and so you get the idea. The were-hedgehog is fun. Kind of looks like Sonic. But he talked to them, and he's like, well, if you're going to get rid of our new neighbor, and they want to know all about the new neighbor. The new neighbor is a half-dragon or dragonborn or something. Not a pleasant person. Killed several of the changing breeds and some of the locals in the forest. So told them where to find her. Then he shifted to human form and went back inside the lodge. They're like, cool. So they continued along, and they found the large leaf fern meadow that he mentioned, and at one edge of it, there's the tower, leaning distinctly. Easy to recognize. Certainly wasn't the wrong tower. And sure enough, on stakes all around the perimeter of the tower, there are skulls, red, drippy skulls. Not nice. So they decided they were going to try to go under cover of the forest to get closer to the tower. They failed. They rolled badly. Neon signs up saying, we're coming to investigate your tower. Just as, not technically, but just about as bad. They came out of some undergrowth, and they're right in front of the tower. It's like, oh, anybody who's in there could see you. They decided to check around to see if there were any entrances, and the only one they found was the big front entrance, a large, sturdy door that looked brand new. So they went to investigate it, checked it for traps. They did find that there was some poison on the door, which would not have been there if they didn't have a rogue. Simply put, I wasn't interested in really punishing them for not having it, and the fact that there was a trap there basically was there as a reward for them looking. So it wasn't quite Schrodinger's trap. It was there because they made the choice of one of them to be a rogue, but if they weren't going to have fun finding a trap and feeling that bit of satisfaction, it wouldn't have been there. That's how I was choosing to run this game. So they wiped off the poison. My wife successfully navigated them around that, and they opened the door. And this is where I started using my 3D dungeoning stuff. I set this up in advance, but I didn't know how far they would get along or how much time they were going to actually spend in the dungeon. So what I did was I created a couple of rooms and just decided to have it so that I could cut out anything that I didn't have time for. If we were running out of time, I could get rid of different encounters, and I could throw things in to make it more challenging, leaving it very fluid, with even an option for randomization if it came to that. They had about an hour left in the night, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to get extravagant with it. The first chamber I had hooked up with some 3D pieces that I had gotten from Rocket Pig Games. They made some 3D terrain. I won it in a lottery, and they shipped it to me, and it's nice, it's lightweight. It's not something I use very often, but I thought it was appropriate here. And because my neoprene mat on my drop-down table is bright red, I thought it looks great like lava. So I put a plank bridge with rope supports, which also came from Rocket Pig. I can actually show you those pieces. They're actually quite nice. They look like this. Nice planking and everything. The only downside is I wish they would have done something to give them more of a grid so that they're more used for tactical scenarios, but it's quite nice. And these pieces are separate and can be locked in, so I can put it in any orientation I want. These can also be used to lock two pieces together, so I can have the entire thing be resistant to, say, a cat jumping on the table and sending the battle pieces all over the place. But worked out pretty good. Looks pretty solid. So I had that with a corridor beyond that, and the bridge overlooked the lava. So I had two challenges there. Number one, 2 lava beetles came out. Lava beetles are something kind of mine. They're an upscale from the fire beetles. They usually live around lava. They can endure lava. They're immune to it. And they can store small amounts of lava inside themselves that they can spew out. Also, when they come out, their first encounter rounds, they're covered in lava, so when they bite, it has a fire effect as well, which kind of makes them nasty. Yeah, that wasn't very much of a fight. Mia turns, skewers one, rolls, gets nearly max damage, just finishes him off in a single stroke. Turns around to walk in front of the princess to protect her. The princess quickly skips out from behind her, uses her rapier, kills the other one. What do I do? Which was actually fine, because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this encounter anyhow. It gave them a touch of combat, they were able to be awesome, and move on. They found out that the bridges were actually kind of like a Jacob's ladder, where they're held in point by a single pinion and could sway and tip easily. So once they found that out and didn't try going across like side by side, and they just went down the middle, they both made the roll to get through, no big deal, resolved with a single dice roll and allowed to go quickly, which is important. At the end of the corridor, there was a misty veil. They walked through it, and I had them both roll a 4-sided die, because randomization can be scary or add intensity or something. They both rolled pretty much within one of each other, so I'm like, okay, they didn't end up in different places. So then I have this kind of a volcanic cavern allay, also one from another one of these lotteries from Rocket Pig. And these are really cool. They definitely fit a particular theme. I am going to one day paint them, I think, with red along the cracks to simulate, lava flow, to make it look even more insidious or maybe even infernal in nature. But I got a number of these, more than enough to make a couple of decent-sized caverns or a little cavern dungeon. And so in there, I had a pair of drow. This is a pre-designed encounter. What I wanted to do was use some of the props that I've got lying around here, because I look for opportunities to use my props. So I had a small handful of these little plastic ponies. Yes, they look like they're cheap knockoff My Little Ponies, and that's their intention, actually. I know that there's a My Little Ponies Tales of Equestria role-playing game, and I thought someday I might be persuaded to run a game of that. So I got these for the miniatures. All you need is a little painted cutie mark on these, and you could go with that. I've got a little My Little Pony unicorn. I have My Little Pony Pegasi. So I have a little bit of everything for that, because I do. Many of them are pink. Some of them are this nice purple. They actually balance quite well. I'm surprised. So basically, there was a challenge. The drawer were like, okay, well, if you want, you're not here to steal our treasure, we could play a game. And they're like, well, what's the game? It's like, well, if you put up something for a chance, you get to pick one of our statuettes. One of our statuettes is special. You'll get your ante back, and you'll get the really cool statuette. If you get the winged statue, you'll get that, and we'll tell you something about this place that you're in. If you pick one of the common ones we really don't care about, then you'll just get that. Okay, so basically I took the 4 statuettes, shook them up, put them in my palm, and let the princess pick one. She exchanged one of her +1 daggers for it, so nothing that really cost her anything great amount. I wanted them to play the game, and Mia didn't have much to play it with, so I only wanted one shot, one try. And she picked the pink pony, which was not the cool purple one, which the Dro loved purple more than any other color, which would have been the super prize, and it was going to be a a statuette of wondrous power, and she didn't pick the one with the wings, which would have told them, they would have given her basically information about how to get to the half-dragon and Rennie. So they didn't get that. They just got the statue, which was a 3-foot-tall ceramic statue of a unicorn. Pretty, worth 100 gold, but it's a big anchor they have to drag around now. Sometimes treasure can be fun. So they decided to go back through the portal again. And this time they rolled on opposite ends of the spectrum, a 4 and a 1. The 4 got her put into another setting that I have, a diamond-shaped chamber, and on a raised platform I took this green glass box that I've had for quite some time. It's hinged, but what I use it for is representing force cage spell. It gives the idea that, you know, they're truly well stuck in there. The bottom is mirrored. It's neat. I like it. And so in that I had Rennie. Now Rennie was being substituted. This is a brass hatchling brass dragon. I don't have a hatchling gold. I thought I did, but they didn't complain. I mean, he still looks nice and metallic and everything. It was pretty clear what he was. And in front of him was the half-dragon, who was... Now, this was Mia who got through there, not the princess. I was a little sad about that, but actually, it probably worked out for the best, because Mia didn't go charging right at him. She decided she was going to be stealthy. And at the same time, the princess ended up in a dungeon segment that I used that had things from the Dungeon of Doom segment I got, with the natural underground dugout tunnels, suitable for ankeg layers or what have you. So I made a little situation like that, but I got to use one of my new toys, the Froghemoth. Love my Froghemoth. To me, this is one of the most fun monsters in D&D. So I, of course, didn't have the full statted Froghemoth going up against a 3rd level rogue. I didn't want them to have to deal with lots and lots of special abilities, so I gave them 3rd level so they could survive something, but not so much they felt infinitely powerful. So she was like getting ready to go and take this thing on because Fluffkins, the rabbit, had followed her. And the thing looked at Fluffkins and went, ooh. And she's like, you're not touching him. And I had her roll an insight roll, which she succeeded at, and I'm like, okay, this thing is way more powerful than you can't hurt him to any significant degree. You don't have any friends helping you. Maybe if all of your friends were here helping, and if you had more than just Mia, you might be able to take this thing on. You will end up in its stomach if you try fighting it. So she skirted around it, noticed that it was sitting on top of a big rune on this pedestal it was on. She was determined to try to get it off, but she really didn't know how to do it. And that's when Fluffkins moved in, and I'm like, hey, he's going to try to knock the frog over because he's tired of being attacked with that tongue. And I rolled a natural 20. And the frog rolled a 6 for its saving throw to avoid being knocked over. So as Tally's looking at it, trying to figure out how she's going to get this thing off, all of a sudden it goes flying off with a massive kick from the rabbit. So she slaps the rune, the misty veil turns pink, and they go running through it before the frog gets them. She managed to make the saving throw against it, entangling her with its tentacles. Now, Mia is creeping closer at this point to the half-dragon, and the whole time, again, remember, role-playing is important, I was hamming up the villain, monologuing. I went to the Jeremy Irons School of bad villain monologuing from the Dungeons & Dragons movie, and he was he was going to revel in stealing the soul of this annoying old whelp and using it as a weapon against his father, taking control of the Empire, and I'm like, okay, well, Rennie obviously doesn't want him to do this, and this guy is pretty wrapped up, so Rennie's like, excuse me, could you just do me one little favor, please? And he's like, what do you want, you wretched thing? Well, you see, what I really want, I know I'm trying not to ask for much, but please, could you please repeat everything you just said, but slower for me? You see, dragons live a very long time, and I know you're going to end my life and everything like that, but here's the thing. I've never had the opportunity of seeing someone making such a colossal mistake in all of my time. I like to see it play out in real time, but with a little bit more drama. The girls were giggling at this, which told me that I was doing this exactly as I wanted, because he was just slamming him, and the overreactions from the villain was everything I was trying to do to make this more impactful. To even though they'd never met this guy, even though this is the first encounter with Rennie, I wanted to establish their personalities, and I wanted them to have fun with it. So suddenly, in comes Tally and Mr. Fluffkins with a pop through the portal. The villain turns, and that's when Mia strikes and misses. Turns out he's wearing chainmail underneath those robes. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, I loved your monologue." He's like, "Oh, thank you. I've been working at it." What? You? Ah! So the villain was attempting to attack using its touch. It kept calling out in Japanese or anime style, "Disintegrating effect!" Ah! And lashing out at her, nearly disintegrating her shield with his first strike. And then he hit her and did some damage as she was able to hit him in response. Tally moved up and started trying some of her backstabbery while the rabbit came flying through, continuing to miss and miss and miss and miss. Rennie was cheering them on, offering them what support he could, but he couldn't participate in the fight at all. And this time the fight was getting a little late in the night, and they were chipping away, doing some damage, and then finally Tally got up behind with a big blow. There was a sneak attack because Mia was fighting her at the same time, and she shishka dragoned. He got off one last, "Oh, this is so typical. The violence inherent in the system." Because yes, I will use Monty Python quotes if I have to. If I'm allowed to. And he perished. So, happy ending. They saved the dragon. They got rid of the force cage from the ring on the half-dragon's finger. And the half-dragon was dead. The darkness was banished. They were successfully able to get out of the tower, get back to the unicorns, get back through the forest, which is a lot easier when you've got a gold dragon hanging around with you. Not too many people are going to mess with that. And they got back to the kingdom. And even though, for her sass earlier with Doombridge, Mia was still going to have to do a night patrol, which is done in extremely heavy armor, carrying this big, ancient, heavy iron halberd at arm's length, walking patrols around the castle at night. 30 laps around the castle. Arms and shoulder will be stiff in the morning. But they were determined that Tally was going to keep her company for her friendship and her service to the princess the whole time. So, successful ending. All in all, those were the different changes that I made, why I made them, to try to make the game as special as possible. I think it was a big success. The players seemed like they enjoyed it. My wife was very, very happy with the night. And the only fly in the ointment is it's a pity that we couldn't have had more of them show up, but next time, perhaps, we'll be able to get something together where more of us will be able to get together in one place and share a great adventure. So, until next time, thank you, and if any of these ideas came from, sounded like something you'd like to try, it's really easy. Dungeons & Dragons is not a hard game to hack, and it never has been. That's why it's been the root of so many other games. So if this idea of customizable background sounds interesting to you, go ahead and try it. If the idea of weeding out things to lower the complications of your characters makes sense to you, you don't want to deal with 15 different languages or whatever, get rid of it. It's not important. If it's not important to your story, don't worry about it. Think like a movie. How often is it that important when somebody speaks another language? Even in something like, I don't know, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, you've got someone who is a Moor who still speaks English with an accent because it's important that he speaks English. That's it. So, yeah, those are my ideas. Turned out to be a pretty good game, and all things considered, that's how you tailor a game so that if you don't know who's going to show or what's going to happen, you too can still have a successful one-shot, even if things are a bit fluid or you're not exactly sure how people are going to meet your game. So, thank you for joining me. I'm Rob, your favorite Dungeon Master online, and until that next time, farewell.